Sign it, Claire. You're not losing anything you ever earned. Ethan Whitmore said it with a pen already held out like he was handing her a receipt. 10 years of marriage, and he didn't look up. Behind him, his new CFO smiled into her coffee. Claire took the pen. What Ethan didn't know was that the quiet woman he was throwing away owned the ground his empire stood on, and she had just decided to stop holding it up. If you believe some people should never be underestimated, subscribe to the channel, stay with this story to the very end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The night it started, Claire Whitmore had been standing beside a marble column in the Dallas ballroom for 40 minutes, and in that time 3 people had asked her to take their coats. She didn't correct any of them. She took the coats, folded them over her arm, and handed them to a young man from the catering staff who kept apologizing. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry they shouldn't have—" "It's all right," Claire said. "They're nervous. Nervous people look for someone who seems like they'll say yes." "You do seem like that," the young man said, and then went pale. "I didn't mean—" "No," Claire said. "You're right, I do." Across the room, her husband was laughing. Ethan Whitmore had a laugh he only used in public, one that carried further than it needed to, and Claire had learned to recognize it the way you learn to recognize a car alarm. Somewhere in the last 4 years, it had stopped belonging to her. She watched him move through the crowd. 42 years old, silver coming in at the temples like it had been designed there, one hand always on someone's shoulder. Investors, 2 congressmen, a woman from a business network holding a microphone at her hip. Whitmore Technologies had just crossed a valuation number that made grown men speak in whispers, and Ethan had spent the entire evening being congratulated for it. Claire had spent the entire evening holding coats. Mrs. Whitmore, she turned, a man in his 60s badge on his lapel-kind eyes. She'd met him once years ago, back when Ethan still introduced her to everyone. "Harold," she said. "Harold Kessler. You gave Ethan his first server contract." Harold blinked. "You remember that I remember? You didn't make him beg for it." "Not many people can say that." "Well," he shifted, embarrassed and pleased at once. "I remember you 2. You were the one who called me. 2 in the morning, if I recall." 1:40, Claire said. "Your wife answered. She still talks about that. Says a girl who calls at 1:40 in the morning about server racks is going to get somewhere." He laughed. Then his face changed. "Can I say something and you don't have to answer?" "You can say it." Harold glanced toward the center of the room where Ethan was standing with a young woman in a dark green dress. "He doesn't bring you up anymore. In meetings, it used to be every meeting. My wife did this. My wife caught that. Now it's my team." Claire kept her face still. It was a skill she'd spent 38 years developing, and she had learned it from a man who had never lost his temper in public in his entire life. "Teams grow," she said. "Sure," Harold said. "Sure they do." He didn't sound convinced. "Anyway, I just wanted you to know somebody remembers." He walked away, and Claire stood there with the strange, thin ache of being seen by the wrong person at the wrong time. Then a microphone squealed and Ethan's voice filled the room. Everyone. I want to do this now before the bar takes all of you." Laughter. He had them. He always had them. 3 years ago, Ethan said, "I sat in a room with 4 people and a whiteboard, and a plan that every single person in this room told me was insane. Some of you told me twice." More laughter. Claire watched him from the column. "And tonight, we're the fastest growing AI company in this country. Not one of the—" Applause rolled up like weather. "But I didn't do this alone," Ethan said. And something in Claire's chest lifted, involuntary, humiliating a reflex she thought she'd killed. "I want to introduce you to the person who is going to take this company from where it is to where it's going," Ethan said. "Our new chief financial officer. She left a firm that offered her twice what I could to come do this. She's the smartest person I've ever put in a room. Madison Carter." The woman in the dark green dress stepped forward, and the room stood up. Claire didn't move. She watched her husband put his hand on Madison Carter's back. Not the shoulder, the back low, in the place a hand goes when it has been there before, and she watched Madison lean into it by an inch, the smallest inch in the world, and she watched 200 people fail to notice. Claire noticed. "And I want to say this, Ethan was still talking because I think it matters. There are people who build, and there are people who watch. Madison builds. The applause came again, and under it, Claire heard her own pulse. She set the last coat down on a chair and walked toward the doors. She got as far as the hallway before she heard heels behind her. "Mrs. Whitmore." Claire turned. Madison Carter was smiling. It was a good smile. Practiced without looking practiced, which took work. "I wanted to introduce myself properly," Madison said. "Ethan talks about you." "Does he? He says you're very private." "That's a generous word for it," Claire said. Madison laughed like they were friends. "I hope this isn't strange. Me, I mean. I know the CFO thing came fast." 9 weeks, Claire said. Madison's smile held, but her eyes did the thing eyes do when a number lands harder than expected. "You keep track. I keep track of everything, Miss Carter. It's the only skill I've got." "Well," Madison tilted her head, "can I be honest with you, woman to woman? People only ask that when they're about to be cruel. That landed too." Madison recovered fast. Claire had to give her that. "I only meant this world is hard on the ones who stay home. Nobody says it out loud, but it's true. And I think it's brave what you do. Standing back, letting him have it." "Letting him have it," Claire repeated. "You know what I mean." "I do," Claire said. "I want to be sure you do." They looked at each other for 3 full seconds. Then Madison said, still smiling, "He's going to need someone who can keep up with him." "That's the second thing people say," Claire said. "Right after woman to woman." She walked out. Ethan came home at 1 in the morning and found her sitting in the dark kitchen with a cup of tea she hadn't touched. "You left," he said. "I did." "Claire, there were 40 people who do you understand what tonight was? Do you have any idea what tonight was?" "It was a Tuesday," Claire said. "Sit down." "I'm not going to sit down." "Then stand." She looked up at him. "Where does your hand go, Ethan?" He stopped. "What?" "Where does your hand go when you introduce someone at a podium?" The silence had a shape to it. Ethan filled it too fast. "Oh my God, don't." No. This is what you want to do tonight." "Tonight." He laughed, and it wasn't the public laugh. It was worse. It was the small one, the one that had teeth. "Claire, you stood in a corner for 3 hours, and now you want to have an argument about where my hand was." "I want you to say a true sentence," Claire said. "Any true sentence. You pick." "Here's a true sentence. Madison Carter came in with a restructuring model that's going to save this company $11 million in the next 2 quarters. That's true." "Here's another one. You haven't been in that building in 2 years. You asked me not to come. I asked you—" He stopped, started over. "I asked you not to come to a board meeting where you had no role." "No role," Claire said. "You have no title, Claire. That's not an insult, that's a fact. That's a fact." She stood up. She did it slowly because she had learned a long time ago that speed reads as panic and stillness reads as certainty, and she had learned that from a man who could end a negotiation by picking up a glass of water. "Ethan," she said, "do you remember the second year? Don't. Payroll was Friday. On Wednesday, you had $931,000 in obligations and $41,000 in the account. You sat on the bathroom floor and you told me you were going to call everyone Thursday morning and tell them it was over. I remember, Claire, I was there. And on Thursday morning, a wire came in." Ethan went quiet. $2.4 million, Claire said. "Anonymous convertible note. No board seat. No control. No conditions. From an entity called Meridian Bell. What's your point?" "My point is, you never once asked who Meridian Bell was." "I asked. Nobody knew. Legal said it was clean and I had a company to save, so I saved it." "You never asked me," Claire said. He stared at her, and for one moment, something moved behind his eyes, a door opening a half-inch onto a room he had never bothered to look into. Then he shut it. "Because you were at home," he said. "Because what would you have known about a convertible note?" Claire nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Okay." Ethan spread his arms. "Okay, what?" "What does okay mean? Say what you mean for once in your life." "I mean, okay," Claire said. "I mean, I finally have my answer, and I want to thank you for giving it to me clearly. You have no idea how rare that is." "Claire." "You should sleep," she said. "You have a 9 o'clock. How do you know I have a 9 o'clock?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Good night, Ethan." She went upstairs and she closed the door and she sat down on the edge of the bed, and she did not cry because there was nothing left in her that thought crying would change the arithmetic. Then she picked up her phone and made a call she hadn't made in 6 years. It rang once. Claire. Her father's voice hadn't aged. It hadn't aged in her entire life. William Sterling sounded exactly the same at 71 as he had when she was 9, and he told her that money is the least interesting thing money does. Dad, it's 2 a.m. in Texas. I know. A pause. She could hear a clock somewhere behind him. He was awake. He was always awake. Say it, he said. He said, I have no title. Another pause. Longer, and he was right, Claire said. That's the part. He was right, Dad. I made sure of it. I built it that way on purpose. 10 years, I built a version of myself with no fingerprints, so that when he loved me, it would mean something, and now he doesn't love me. And the only thing I have to show for the whole experiment is that he was right. Her father didn't say anything for a while. Then, do you want me to be your father right now, or do you want me to be William Sterling? Claire closed her eyes. Ask me tomorrow, she said. Claire, ask me tomorrow, Dad. All right, he said. But you should know something first. You should know it tonight and not tomorrow. What Meridian Bell's note converts on a change of marital status. You wrote that clause yourself. You were 29, and you were sitting in my library, and you were furious with me for suggesting it, and then you wrote a better version than mine. Claire opened her eyes. I remember she said quietly. I've never asked you to use it, William said. I'm not asking now. I'm telling you it exists because you're the kind of person who forgets she's holding a knife. The line went quiet. Dad? Yes. He introduced her at the podium. Not me. Her. Her father exhaled one breath, and in it, Claire heard something she had heard exactly twice in her life, once at her mother's funeral, and once when a man had tried to take the company from him in 1994. Go to sleep, sweetheart, William Sterling said. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. It was. At 9:40 the next morning, Claire's phone rang, and it was Ethan's assistant, Priya, who had been Ethan's assistant for 6 years and who had a voice that never wobbled. Her voice wobbled. Mrs. Whitmore, Ethan would like you to come into the office. Now at 11. He said he asked me to say it's a business matter. Claire sat very still. Priya, ma'am, is Miss Carter going to be in the room? The silence lasted 2 seconds too long. Yes, ma'am. And is there an attorney? Mr. Devereaux is on the calendar for 11:15. Thank you, Priya. You didn't have to tell me that. Mrs. Whitmore. Priya's voice cracked and steadied. In the second year, you brought lunch to the whole floor for 11 weeks straight. Nobody in that building thinks you were nothing. He's the only one. Claire took a breath. Wear the blue one, Priya said suddenly. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. No, Claire said, it wasn't. She wore the blue one. The thing about walking into Whitmore Technologies at 11 in the morning was that people still knew her face. A developer named Owen actually stood up. A woman from operations said Claire, and then covered her mouth like she'd sworn in church. Someone in the elevator said, Are you back, with such raw hope in his voice that Claire had to look at the floor. Ethan was standing when she came in. Madison was already sitting. That was the detail Claire would think about later, not the papers, not the number. Madison was already sitting. She had been in the room first. Claire, Ethan said, Thanks for coming. You're welcome, Ethan. Sit, I'll stand. He didn't like that. She watched him not like it. Fine, he said. He slid a folder across the desk. I want to do this cleanly. I don't want lawyers turning it into a war. There's an attorney on your calendar at 11:15. Ethan's jaw moved. That's procedure. Of course. Claire. He put both hands flat on the desk. Last night should never have happened. What you said, what I said. But it happened. And it clarified something, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't. Clarified, Claire said. We want different lives. Do we? Yes. He gestured in the folder. 15 million, the house in Terrytown, health coverage for life, car driver staff. It's more than the prenup, Claire. It's significantly more than the prenup, and I did that on purpose. Madison spoke for the first time. It's extremely generous, she said. I want you to hear that from someone who does this math professionally. Claire turned her head slowly and looked at her. "Miss Carter," she said, "what is your job title?" Madison's smile flickered. "Chief Financial Officer. And which line item on the balance sheet is his marriage silence?" "I'm here as a friend," Madison said. "You're sitting in the chair," Claire said. "Friends stand." Ethan slammed his palm on the desk, not hard, but enough. "Enough. Claire, enough. Do you know how many women would kill for this offer? Do you understand what I'm handing you?" "Tell me," Claire said. "I'm handing you a life you didn't build." He said it, and the room got very quiet, and Claire watched him hear himself and decide not to take it back. "There it is. Fine. There it is. I built this. Every dollar in that folder came out of 18-hour days, and I am giving it to you anyway because I was raised right, because you were there, because I'm not a monster. But don't stand in my office and make me feel small for being generous." Claire picked up the folder. She read it. Not skimmed, read it. All 11 pages. It took 4 minutes and 40 seconds, and nobody spoke for any of it. And Claire could feel the exact moment Ethan started to get uncomfortable, and she let it keep going for another 90 seconds after that. "Page 7, she said finally. "Section 4, B." Ethan blinked. "What?" "Mutual release of all claims known and unknown, including but not limited to any interest equity, contractual or beneficial in Whitmore Technologies or its affiliates arising at any time." She looked up. "Who wrote this, Devereaux?" "No, he didn't." Claire looked at Madison. "Devereaux writes heretofore, twice a page. Whoever wrote 4B doesn't write heretofore." Madison's face did not move at all, which told Claire everything. "Does it matter?" Ethan snapped. "Only to me," Claire said. "It's standard. It's not standard, Ethan. It's specific. Standard says marital property. This says beneficial interest arising at any time. Somebody in this room is worried about something they can't name." She set the folder down. "That's not an accusation. That's a compliment. Somebody in this room is careful." "Claire," Ethan's voice had changed. He'd heard it. He wasn't stupid. That was the tragedy of him. He had never once been stupid. "What am I missing?" And there it was, the last door. Claire stood there and felt the whole 10 years compress into the space of one question. She could tell him, right now, 6 words. "Meridian Bell is me, you fool." She could watch his face come apart. She could watch him understand that the woman he'd been calling decorative had been the floor under his feet for a decade. And then he would love her again. That was the thing. That was the whole horror of it. He would love her again immediately, completely, and forever, and every day for the rest of her life, she would know exactly why. "Claire," Ethan said, "ask me. Whatever it is, ask me." "All right," Claire said, "I have one question. If you answer it honestly, I'll sign this and you'll never hear from me again. If you lie, I'll know and I'll still sign it, but you'll have to live with having lied. That's not a question, that's a threat. It's the last favor I'm ever going to do you. Do you want it or not?" Ethan looked at her. "Ask," he said. Claire said, "Do you really believe I contributed nothing?" And Ethan Whitmore, who had a photographic memory for numbers, who could recite the terms of a Series B from 4 years ago, who had been on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. with his wife's hand on the back of his neck telling him, "Breathe, breathe. We're not done, Ethan." Whitmore smiled. It was almost gentle. That was what made it unforgivable. "I think he said that you were always comfortable living in my shadow." Nobody moved. Then Claire nodded once and reached across the desk and picked up his pen. "Wait," Ethan said. "Claire, I didn't mean—" "You did," she said. And I asked. "So it's mine now." She signed. She signed all 11 pages, and she did it without hurrying, and the only sound in the office was the pen. When she was done, she squared the pages and set them down and pushed them back across the desk with 2 fingers. "Now strike the money," she said. Ethan stared. "What, the 15 million? Strike it. The house in Terrytown. Strike it. The coverage, the car, the staff, all of it. I'll sign an amendment right now, or your attorney can draft it at 11:15 and I'll come back. I don't care which." "Claire, that's—" He actually laughed, disbelieving. "That's insane. That's Madison, tell her." Madison had gone very quiet. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said slowly, "if you refuse consideration, there's an argument the release isn't enforceable. You should take $1. Take something." "I know," Claire said. I know exactly what I should take." She looked at Madison for a long moment, and something passed between the two women that had nothing to do with Ethan at all. "You're good," Claire said. "You're actually good. That's the sad part. You didn't have to do it this way. Do what Madison said. Sit down first," Claire said. Madison's hand tightened on the arm of the chair. Claire turned to her husband, her ex-husband as of 11 minutes ago, functionally, whatever the courts would eventually say. "Ethan," she said, "I don't need anything from you." "Everybody needs something," Ethan said. "It came out wrong. It came out like a man reaching for a railing." "No," Claire said. "That's not a law of nature. That's just the only thing you know how to believe about people, because it's the only thing that makes what you did this morning survivable." Claire. "You were kind once," she said. "I want you to know that I'm not making that up. In year 1, you gave Owen your car. You didn't tell anyone. You told me you sold it." Ethan's throat moved. "I love that man very much," Claire said. "I don't know where he went. I looked for him for 4 years. She picked up her purse. "Claire, sit down. Sit down and let's Ethan," she said at the door. "When it starts, and it's going to start soon, I want you to remember that I gave you a question, and you gave me an answer." He frowned. When what starts, Claire didn't answer. She walked out through the floor she had bought lunch for, past Owen, who stood up again, past the woman from operations, past Priya, who was crying openly at her desk and pretending she wasn't, and Claire stopped and put a hand on Priya's shoulder. 6 years, Claire said. You never once let him look unprepared. "Ma'am, when you get the call," Claire said, "take it." Priya wiped her face. "What call you'll know," Claire said. She was in the elevator when her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. William Sterling. She let it ring twice and then she answered, and she said the only 3 words she had left. "Be my father." There was a silence on the line. Then William Sterling said very quietly, "I've got you, sweetheart." And then, in a completely different voice, the one that had ended men, he said, "Give me 48 hours. Upstairs in the office, Ethan Whitmore was still holding 11 signed pages he had gotten exactly what he wanted from, and he could not for the life of him understand why his hands were shaking. "She's bluffing," Madison said. "Nobody walks away from 15 million. She'll be back Thursday with a lawyer." "Yeah," Ethan said. "Ethan." "Yeah," he said again. He walked to the window. Downtown Austin sat out there, gold and glass, his name on the 14th floor of the building across the street where they'd just signed a lease. "Madison," he said, "pull the cap table. Now pull the cap table. Ethan, the acquisition closes in 9 days we have." "Pull the cap table," Ethan said, "and find me every note that ever converted, and find me who the hell Meridian Bell is." Madison went very still behind him. "What did you say?" Ethan turned around, and for the first time he saw the expression on his CFO's face, and it was not confusion. It was fear. "You know that name," he said slowly. Madison didn't answer. "Madison, you wrote 4B. You wrote it because you know that name." She stood up, and her voice was steady, and she said the sentence that would end Ethan Whitmore's life as he understood it. "Ethan Madison Carter said, I need you to sit down, and I need you to understand that I only found out 3 weeks ago, and I need you to understand that I tried to get her to sign a release before you said something you couldn't take back." Ethan didn't sit down. "Who is she?" he said. Madison looked at the door Claire had walked out of. "She's the reason this company exists," she said, "and you just told her she lived in your shadow." At 11:52 that morning, Madison Carter said the name out loud a second time, and Ethan Whitmore heard it the way a man hears a diagnosis. "Meridian Bell isn't a fund, Ethan. It never was. It's a single-purpose entity. 1 member, 1 signature." "Whose signature?" "I'm not going to be the one who tells you." "Madison." He crossed the room in 4 steps. "I have 410 employees. I have a close in 9 days. Whose signature?" "Then let me do my job," she said. "And my job right now is to get her back in this building and get $1 of consideration into her hand, because if that release isn't enforceable, you don't have a company, you have a rental. Answer the question." "I'm answering a better one." Ethan grabbed the folder off the desk and held it up. "She signed. 11 pages. She signed all of it." "She signed and refused payment," Madison said. "Ethan, listen to me. Listen. In every state in this country, a release without consideration is a piece of paper with handwriting on it. She didn't walk out of here beaten. She walked out of here holding a receipt that proves you tried. That was the first moment. Ethan would go back to it 100 times in the months that followed, and every time it would be the same. The folder in his hand, the weight of it wrong like a box that should have had something in it. "She's proud," he said. "That's all this is. She's proud, and she's hurt, and she wanted to make me feel it. She read Section 4B in 4 minutes, so she's a good reader. She read Section 4B in 4 minutes, and she knew Devereaux didn't write it, and she told me I sat down first." Madison's voice cracked for half a second, and then came back flat. "Ethan, I have been in rooms with sovereign funds. I have never in my life been read like that. That woman was not hurt. That woman was finished." At 12:15, Priya buzzed through and said Mr. Devereaux was in the conference room, and Ethan told her to send him up, and then he stood at the window with his hands in his pockets and didn't move for 4 minutes. "Ethan," Madison said quietly, "call her." "No." "Call her and apologize and get her to take $1. I said no." "Why?" Ethan turned around, and there was something almost pleading in it, which was the worst part, because Ethan Whitmore did not plead. "Because if I call her right now," he said, "she'll know I'm scared. And in 10 years, Madison, in 10 years, that woman has never once been wrong about what I was feeling, and I cannot afford for her to be right about this one." Madison stared at him for a long moment. "That's the whole marriage," she said. "Isn't it? Right there. That's the whole thing. Get out. Ethan. Get Devereaux. Get the cap table. Get out." She got out. At 12:40, Claire Sterling was sitting in the back of a car on Congress Avenue with her phone face down on her knee, and she had been sitting like that for 19 minutes, and the driver had stopped asking where she wanted to go. Then the phone buzzed. Not a call. A message. It was from Priya. 3 words. "He's not okay." Claire looked at it a long time. She typed, "Neither am I." Then she deleted it. Then she typed, "Don't take his side out of habit." She deleted that too. Finally, she wrote, "Update your resume tonight. Not because you'll need it, because you should never work for someone you're afraid to leave." The reply came in 11 seconds. "Ma'am, is it true you're not taking anything?" Claire typed. "It's true." "Why?" Claire's thumb hovered. "Because he offered it to a woman who didn't exist," she wrote. "And I'm done pretending to be her." She turned the phone off. At 1:20 that afternoon, in a building on Park Avenue that had no name on it, a man named Grant Hollis walked into William Sterling's office and set down a single sheet of paper. "Meridian Bell," Hollis said. 2.4 million year, 2 convertible, never converted, never called, sitting there for 8 years like a landmine somebody planted in their own yard. Terms. Convertible at holder's option upon any of 9 triggers. Hollis looked up. Trigger 6 is a change in the marital status of the holder. William Sterling did not react. "Sir," Hollis said carefully, "I've been doing this for 22 years, and I've never seen a clause like that in an early-stage note. That's not a financing instrument. That's a woman building herself an exit and then never using it." "She's not a woman," William said. "She's my daughter." "Understood. What does it convert into?" Hollis hesitated. "Mr. Hollis." 19%, Hollis said. "At the year 2 valuation, post-conversion with the anti-dilution stack. And I want to be very clear, I've run this 4 times. It comes to 19.2% of Whitmore Technologies as of this morning." The clock behind William Sterling ticked. "Which makes her," William said. "The single largest outside holder," Hollis said. "Bigger than the Series B, bigger than Ethan's co-founder, bigger than everyone but Ethan himself, and it's not close. And if she never converts, then it's a $2.4 million loan he's been servicing out of petty cash for 8 years, and nobody ever thinks about it again." William Sterling stood up and walked to the window and put his hands behind his back. And in that room that meant something, the way weather means something to farmers. Hollis had worked for him for 11 years and had seen him do it twice. "Don't convert," William said. Hollis blinked. "Sir, you heard me." "Mr. Sterling, with respect, that note is the fastest, cleanest, most surgical. It's her knife," William said. "Not mine. If I pick it up, then for the rest of her life the story is that her father saved her and she will believe it, and she will be 9 years old again in every room she walks into forever." He turned around. "No, we don't touch the note." Hollis set his jaw. "Then what do you want?" William Sterling smiled, and Grant Hollis, who was not a soft man, felt the hair on his arms stand up. "I want to know who his suppliers are," William said. "I want to know who's underwriting his line of credit. I want to know the name of every bank on that acquisition and every board member's brother-in-law. I don't want to hurt him, Grant. I want to stop helping him." "We're not helping him." "Aren't we?" William said. "Whitmore Technologies runs on rare earth substrate out of a plant in Malaysia. Who owns the plant?" Hollis went to the sheet, read it, went pale. "Say it," William said. "We do," Hollis said, louder. "Sterling Global owns 61% of the parent," Hollis said. "Sir, we have 400 holdings. Nobody would have, William agreed. "Nobody did. For 10 years that man has been buying his lifeblood from his wife's family at a discount he thought he negotiated." He sat back down. "That's the part I want you to understand, Grant. I never lifted a finger for him, not once. She asked me not to, and I honored it. He simply lived his whole life inside a house he didn't know he was standing in. So what do we do?" "Nothing," William Sterling said. "We do absolutely nothing. We stop the discount. We stop the priority allocation his procurement guy thinks he charmed out of somebody in 2019. We stop expediting. We stop everything we were doing for free, and we let him buy at the same price as everyone else on Earth." Hollis stared. "That's it. That's the play. That's the play. He'll survive that." "He might," William said. "Let's find out what he's made of. She'd want that. She'd never forgive me for anything else." At 4:05 that afternoon, Ethan Whitmore called his wife's phone, and it went to voicemail, and he hung up without leaving a message. And then he called again 11 minutes later and hung up again, and then he called a third time and left one. "Claire, it's me. Look, this morning got away from us, both of us. I said a thing, you said a thing." A pause, traffic behind him. "You need to take the money. I'm serious. Not for me, for you. Call Devereaux, take the money, and then you can hate me all you want and it doesn't cost you anything." Another pause longer. "Claire, who is Meridian Bell." Silence for 4 full seconds. "Call me back," he said, and hung up. She didn't call back. At 9:30 the next morning, the first thing broke, and it broke so quietly that nobody in the building noticed for 6 hours. A procurement manager named Dale Whitaker sent a routine confirmation on a substrate order that had been running on autopilot since 2019 and got back an email he read 3 times. "Effective immediately, all allocation under the preferred schedule is discontinued. Orders may be placed at published rates subject to standard queue." Dale wrote back, "There's been a mistake, we've been on preferred since." The reply came in 9 minutes. "There is no mistake." At 3:40 that afternoon, Dale walked into Ethan's office without knocking, which he had never done in 6 years. "We lost the allocation." Ethan didn't look up. "Which allocation?" "The substrate." Now he looked up. "What do you mean, lost?" "I mean, it's gone. I called Kuala Lumpur and I got a man who was very polite and very sorry and told me we're welcome to buy at published rates. So buy at published rates." Dale laughed. It was not a good laugh. "Ethan, published rates are 4 times what we pay, and the queue is 11 weeks. The room got very quiet. 11 weeks, Ethan said. 11 weeks. We close in 8 days. I'm aware of what we close in." Ethan stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. "Then get on a plane. To Malaysia. To the moon." "Dale, I don't care. You've been drinking with these people for 5 years. You told me at the Christmas party that Raheem thinks of you like a brother." "He does," Dale said. "That's how I know how bad this is, because he wouldn't take my call, Ethan. Raheem, he had somebody else call me and tell me he wasn't available." Dale's voice went thin. "I've known that man since 2018. He was at my daughter's christening. He wouldn't take my call." Ethan stood there with his hands on his desk. "Somebody leaned on him," he said. "Somebody bought him," Dale said. "Or somebody already owned him and just remembered they did." At 5:15, Madison found Ethan in the empty conference room with a legal pad in front of him and nothing written on it. "Say it," he said. "The Ridgeline Bank pulled out of the syndicate." Ethan closed his eyes. "They didn't pull out. Madison said. That's the thing, they didn't pull out. They just moved us into a different review tier. Nothing's declined, nothing's dead. It's all just slower. Everything is slower. She sat down across from him. Ethan, I've been doing this since I was 23, and I want you to understand something. When people want to kill you, it's loud. Lawsuits, press. Somebody leaks something. This isn't loud. Then what is it? It's a hand coming off your back, Madison said. Ethan looked up. I don't know how else to describe it, she said. It's like there was a hand there for 10 years, and nobody ever told you, and the hand just came off, and now you're finding out what you actually weigh. At 6:02 p.m., Ethan Whitmore did something he had not done in 4 years. He drove home in the middle of the news cycle, and he walked into his own house, and he stood in the kitchen where his wife had sat with a cup of tea she never touched, and he opened her drawer. He didn't know what he was looking for. What he found was a notebook. It was cheap, 99 cents, the kind you buy at a gas station. It was full of Claire's handwriting, which he had not seen up close in years, and the first page was dated 8 years ago, and it said at the top in block letters, "Things to fix before he notices." Ethan sat down on the kitchen floor. He read for 2 hours. Every page was a problem. Every page was a problem he had never known existed. Payroll gaps closed with numbers he didn't recognize. A supplier who had wanted out in year 3 and somehow hadn't gotten out. A lawsuit from a former engineer that had evaporated so completely, Ethan had assumed the man lost his nerve. There was a page from year 5 that just said, Sarah Kimball leaving. Fix. And then in different ink, 3 days later, fixed. Do not tell him it was close. And on page 41, in the middle of a list of nothing, one line that stopped his heart. Wire MB 2.4, Thursday a.m. He can't know. If he knows it's from me, he'll never believe he did it himself. And if he doesn't believe he did it himself, he'll never do it again. Ethan put the notebook down. He got up. He walked to the sink. He turned the water on and then turned it off without doing anything. Then he said out loud to an empty kitchen in a voice that didn't sound like his, "Oh my God." At 8:40 that night, Ethan called Claire and she answered on the first ring. Neither of them said anything for a moment. "You're in the kitchen," Claire said. "How do you know that?" "Because you're breathing like you're sitting on a floor." Ethan closed his eyes so hard it hurt. "Meridian Bell is you," he said. "Yes." "Claire, don't. You put $2.4 million into my company, and you let me think I was a genius." "You were a genius," Claire said. "That's the thing you're never going to believe now, and it's my fault, and I've made my peace with it. You were a genius, Ethan. You just weren't a genius alone, and you couldn't survive knowing that, so I let you not know." "That's not love," he said. "That's management." "Yes," Claire said. "It is. I managed you for 10 years, and I did it so well you gave a speech about people who build and people who watch." Her voice didn't shake. That was what undid him. "You want me to be the villain of that, and I'll take it. I'll take all of it. I lied to you for a decade about who I was, and I don't get to be innocent. Who are you?" "Silence. The Claire. Who are you?" "You're going to find out in about 14 hours, she said. "And I'd rather you find out from a document than from me, because if I tell you now, you'll say something in the next 60 seconds that you'll spend the rest of your life trying to take back, and I've got nothing left in me to forgive you with. Tell me anyway." "No. Claire, please. Please." And Claire Sterling in a hotel room in New York heard her husband say, "please," for the first time in 6 years, and had to put her hand over her mouth. "I have to go," she said. Don't go. Claire, the substrate's gone. Ridgeline moved us to Tier 3. Dale can't get Raheem on the phone. It's you, isn't it? It's you." "No," Claire said. "Then who?" "Nobody," she said. "That's what you're not going to understand, and it's the only true thing I have left to give you, so please hear it. Nobody is doing anything to you, Ethan. People just stopped doing things for you." A breath. For 10 years, there was a reason those calls got returned. There was a reason that Plant held your allocation. There was a reason that lawsuit went away, and there was a reason Sarah Kimball didn't quit in year 5, and you never once asked what the reason was, because you assumed the reason was you. "Claire." "It wasn't a conspiracy," Claire said. "It was a favor. It was 10 years of favors, and you thought it was weather." The line was quiet. "I'm going to lose the company," Ethan said. "Maybe." "Say something else." I don't have anything else, Claire said. I gave you a question yesterday. You gave me an answer. I didn't mean it. You did, she said. And I want you to know something, and then I'm going to hang up. When you said it, I felt relief. That's what you did to me, Ethan. You said the cruelest sentence of my life, and my whole body relaxed, because after 4 years of wondering, I finally knew. Claire, I'm begging you. Goodbye, Ethan. She hung up. And then Claire Sterling sat down on the edge of a hotel bed and cried for the first time in 11 years for exactly 90 seconds with a stopwatch running, because that was what her father had taught her when she was 9 and her mother was dying, and she had hated him for it every day since, and it had saved her life more times than she could count. At 6 o'clock the next morning, the documents hit. It wasn't a press release. That was the thing nobody understood afterward in all the coverage and all the podcasts. There was no press release. There was no leak. There was a routine amended filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission by an entity called Sterling Global Holdings, disclosing beneficial ownership positions across 406 portfolio companies, as it did every year on the same day. And it took a junior analyst at a Boston fund named Wesley Pham about 40 minutes to notice line 211. Wesley Pham typed a message to his group chat at 6:47 a.m. Wade is Whitmore's substrate parent, a Sterling holding. Nobody answered for 3 minutes. Then somebody wrote, "It's been a Sterling holding since 2016. Then somebody else wrote, "Pull the Whitmore cap table." Then somebody else wrote Meridian Bell LLC, who's Meridian Bell. And at 7:31 a.m., Wesley Pham found a Delaware filing from 8 years ago with one name on it, and he sat back in his chair, and he said to nobody, "Oh, you have got to be kidding me." At 8:15, Ethan's phone had 240 missed calls. At 8:16, Madison Carter walked into his office and shut the door and locked it, which no one had ever done, and said, "Ethan, sit down." "I'm not going to sit down." "Sit down." He didn't. Madison put a single page on the desk. "Claire Whitmore," she said. "Legal name at birth, Claire Amelia Sterling. Only child of William Sterling. Sole heir Sterling Global Holdings. Private valuation. Ethan and I want you to hear the number, and I want you to hear that I'm not exaggerating and I'm not rounding up. Say it. $1.2 trillion. Ethan Whitmore did not move. He stood there for 11 seconds. Madison counted later because she was the kind of person who counted. "That's not a real number," he said. "It's a real number." "That's not Madison. That's not a number that a person is. It's a family," Madison said. "Energy, rail, ports, semiconductor substrate, 2 undersea cable consortiums. They own the parent of the company that makes the aluminum in the frame of the phone in your hand. And Ethan, I need you to focus, because in about 9 minutes, your board is going to call and ask you a question, and your answer is going to decide whether you have a job." "What question?" "They're going to ask if you knew." Ethan looked at her. "They're going to ask if you knew who your wife was," Madison said, "and if you say no, they're going to ask how a man who didn't know who he was married to for 10 years can be trusted to know who he's buying for $200 million in 8 days. The room was completely silent. "And if I say yes," Ethan said, "then you married $1 trillion and hid it from your investors for a decade, and that's securities fraud." Ethan started to laugh. It was terrible. Madison would remember it for years. He put both hands flat on the desk and laughed until he couldn't breathe, and then he stopped all at once like a switch. 19%, he said. Madison went still. "What?" "Meridian Bell, the note." Ethan's eyes came up, and they were clear, and that was somehow worse. "You ran it. You ran it 3 weeks ago. That's why you wrote 4B. Tell me the number." "Ethan, tell me the number, Madison." 19.2, she said. He nodded slowly. "She could have converted yesterday," he said. "She could have converted the second she signed. She'd have walked out of this building owning 1/5 of my company, and there wouldn't have been a thing I could do about it." He looked at the ceiling. "She didn't." "No." "Why didn't she—" Madison opened her mouth, closed it. "Say it," Ethan said. "You've been in the room with her once, and you read her better than I did in 10 years, so say it." "Because taking it would have meant she wanted it," Madison said quietly. "And if she wanted it, then the last 10 years were a transaction. And Ethan, that woman would rather lose everything on earth than let you believe the last 10 years were a transaction." Ethan Whitmore turned toward the window. I told her she lived in my shadow, he said. Yes. She wired me $2.4 million and sat on a bathroom floor with me and told me to breathe. And 8 years later, I told her she lived in my shadow in front of you, and I smiled when I said it. Yes, Madison said. You did. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then very quietly, get Devereaux and Madison. Find out what plane she's on. At 11:04 that morning, Claire Sterling walked into a conference room on the 51st floor of a building on Park Avenue, and there were 9 people already standing, and they all stopped talking, and her father was at the far end with his hands behind his back. Sit, William Sterling said to the room. Or don't. I don't care. Claire, come here. She came. I did nothing, he said. I want that on the record in front of all of them. I pulled a discount he never earned, and I stopped a favor he never asked for. That's the whole list. Grant, is that the whole list? That's the whole list, sir. He's still standing, William said to his daughter. Barely. He's got 8 days and a hole in his supply chain and every reporter in America outside his lobby. He'll survive it, or he won't. He looked at her. The note's still yours. Nobody's touched it. Nobody will. Claire looked at the table. Sweetheart, William said, look at me. She looked. You have 3 choices, William Sterling said, and I'm going to say all 3 out loud because you're 38 years old and you're not a child, and I'm not going to protect you from your own arithmetic ever again. 1. You convert. You take 19% and you take his board seat and you take his name off the building and you make him watch. 2. You do nothing. He fixes it or he doesn't, and either way, you never have to see him again. And in 5 years, you'll be a woman who used to be married to somebody. And 3? William Sterling was quiet for a moment. 3, he said, is the one I'm afraid of. 3 is you go back. Nobody in the room breathed. Because you'll want to, her father said. Around day 6, when it's bad, when he calls you at 3 in the morning and he's not asking for money, he's just scared and he says your name the way he used to say it. That's when it'll happen. He leaned forward. And Claire, if you go back to a man who only found out you were worth something when a filing told him, then I have failed you as a father in the only way I ever cared about. And I'd rather you take the 19% and burn it all down. I'd rather that. I want you to know I'd rather that. Disa si mi bonisten. Claire Sterling stood in a room with 9 of the most powerful people in American private capital and did not answer her father. She turned to Grant Hollis instead. Mr. Hollis. Ma'am. What's his cash position? Hollis checked. 14 weeks. 12 if the close goes through because he'd have to fund it. So the acquisition kills him. The acquisition kills him, Hollis agreed. If he closes it without the substrate line, he's buying a factory he can't feed. It's the single worst decision available to him, and he's going to make it, because backing out publicly right now looks like weakness, and that man would rather die than look weak. Claire nodded. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that made Grant Hollis put down his pen. Buy it, she said. Ma'am. The target, the company he's acquiring. What is it, 300 people in Reno? 312. Buy it, Claire said. Today. Pay whatever they want, pay double. I don't care, I want signatures before dinner. Hollis stared at her. Claire, if we take the target out from under him 8 days before close, that's not stopping a favor. That's a hostile act. That's the loudest thing anyone's done in this market in 5 years, and every reporter alive will have your name on it by tomorrow morning. I know. They'll say it's revenge. They can say what they want. Your father just said, my father, Claire said, just gave me 3 choices, and I'm declining all 3, and he knew I would, which is why he only listed 3. Every head in the room turned to William Sterling. And William Sterling, who had not smiled in a business meeting since 1994, looked at his daughter with an expression that took Grant Hollis 11 years to understand and said, there she is. Claire didn't smile back. Those 312 people are going to lose their jobs when he collapses, she said. They didn't do anything to me. He's about to buy them with money he doesn't have and bury them in a hole he dug himself, and I'm not going to stand in this room and let it happen so that I can feel something about my marriage. She turned to Hollis. That's not revenge. That's Tuesday. Buy it." "Yes, ma'am." "And Mr. Hollis." "Ma'am?" "When you call their CEO," Claire said, "tell him the truth. Tell him exactly who I am and exactly who I was married to, and tell him he can say no and nothing will happen to him. I'm not doing this the way it's been done to me." Hollis left the room at a speed that was not quite running, and at 11:40 that morning in Austin, Texas, Ethan Whitmore's phone rang, and it was a number he didn't know, and he answered it, and a man's voice said, "Mr. Whitmore, this is Ray Deakins in Reno. I'm calling because I've just been made an offer, and I've been told to tell you about it before I answer. And son, I've got to be honest with you. I've been in business 40 years, and I have never in my life had somebody do that." Ethan's mouth went dry. "Who made the offer?" he said. "Well," Ray Deakins said, "that's the part you're going to want to sit down for." At 11:44, Ray Deakins said the name, and Ethan Whitmore heard the sound of his own blood. "Sterling Global Holdings," Deakins said. "And before you ask, no, it's not a fund manager, it's not a middleman. The woman herself got on the phone with me, Claire Sterling." Ethan said nothing. "Mr. Whitmore, you still there?" "I'm here." "Now here's the part I keep chewing on," Deakins said. "She calls me herself. No banker, no lawyer, no assistant. And the first thing out of her mouth, first thing before a number, before anything, she says, 'Mr. Deakins, I need to tell you who I am, and I need to tell you who I used to be married to, because you're going to find out in about 6 hours from a reporter, and I'd rather you hear it from me.'" He paused. 40 years, son. Nobody's ever done that to me. Not once. "What did she offer? 280. Ethan closed his eyes. His own bid was 210, and it had taken him 4 months and every favor he had to get there. "And she said something else," Deakins went on. "She said I could say no. She said if I said no, nothing would happen to me. No retaliation, no blacklist, no phone calls to my bank. She said it twice, like she needed me to actually believe it." "Do you believe it?" "Mr. Whitmore," Deakins said, "I've got 312 people out here, and about 90 of them have been with me since we were making circuit boards in a body shop. I don't have the luxury of believing anybody. So let me ask you plain, because she told me to ask you plain. Ask, can you still close?" The silence went on so long that Deakins said his name again. "Say it out loud," Deakins said, not unkindly. "It's easier out loud." "No," Ethan said. "Say the whole thing." "I can't close," Ethan said. "My substrate line is gone. If I bought you today, I'd be buying a factory I can't feed, and in 6 months, I'd be laying off 200 of your people to make the math work, and I'd tell myself it was the market." Deakins exhaled. "There it is." "You already knew." "I already knew. I wanted to see if you did." A chair creaked somewhere in Nevada. "Son, can I tell you something man to man, and then I'm going to sign her paper?" "Go ahead." "I met your wife once, 4 years ago at that thing in Scottsdale. Little lady hung back by the wall. She asked me about the body shop." Deakins laughed. "Nobody asks about the body shop. Everybody asks about the exit. She asked me the name of the guy who let us use it and whether he ever got paid back. His name was Curtis Hale, and no, he never did. And I've thought about that damn near every day for 31 years. And she's the only person in this entire industry who ever made me say it out loud." Ethan's hand was shaking. He watched it happen from somewhere outside his body. "She remembered his name," Deakins said. "Today, on the phone, 4 years later. Said, 'Mr. Deakins, before we start, did Curtis Hale ever get paid back?' And I said, 'No, ma'am. He passed in 2009. And she said, 'Then let's do this in a way he'd have liked.'" Ethan couldn't speak. "I'm sorry for whatever's happening to you," Ray Deakins said. "I truly am. But son, if a woman like that walked away from you, she didn't do it in a day." He hung up. At 11:58, the board called. Ethan put it on speaker because his hands weren't working, and Madison stood by the door with her arms crossed, and the first voice was Harold Kessler's, which was somehow worse than anything. "Ethan, it's Harold. We've got 7 of 9 on the line." "Harold." "Son, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to think for a second before you answer, because there are lawyers listening. Ask, did you know who your wife was?" Madison's eyes came up fast. She mouthed one word, "careful." Ethan looked at her, and then he did the thing that he would later understand was the first honest act of his adult life, and it cost him everything, and he'd have done it again. No, he said. Nobody spoke. I want that clean, Ethan said. I didn't know. Not a rumor, not a suspicion, not a feeling. I sat across from that woman for 10 years, and I never asked her one real question about where she came from because I didn't care. That's the answer, Harold. It isn't that she hid it, it's that I never looked. A man named Corbin Ellis said, Ethan, that's not better. I know it's not better. You understand what you just did, Ellis said. You just told 9 fiduciaries that the CEO of an AI company whose entire pitch is pattern recognition missed $1 trillion in his own kitchen. Yes, there's no version of this where you keep the chair. I know. Harold Kessler cut in quietly. Corbin, give the man a minute. Harold, with respect. Give the man a minute, Harold said, and something in it shut the line up. Then Harold said, Ethan, the Reno deal. Dead. How dead? Deacon signs with Sterling this afternoon. He called me first. She made him call me first. Somebody on the line made a small sound. She made him call you first, Harold repeated. Yes. Ethan, Harold said slowly. Do you understand what she did? She took the deal. No. Harold's voice went up for the first time in the 11 years Ethan had known him. No, son, she saved 312 people from a bankruptcy you were about to hand them, and then she made sure you got to hear it from a human being instead of a headline, and you are sitting there calling it a hostile act. A pause. I've been in this business since before you were born. That is the single most decent thing I have ever seen anyone do in a takeover, and she did it to you, and you still can't see it. Ethan put his hand over his mouth. Emergency session, Corbin Ellis said. Friday, 9 a.m. Friday, Harold agreed. Ethan, get counsel, not Devereaux, real counsel. The line went dead. At 12:20, Madison Carter locked the door for the second time in 2 days. Sit down, she said. Madison, I'm not asking. Something in her voice was different, and Ethan noticed it and sat. 3 weeks ago, Madison said, you asked me how I found out about Meridian Bell. You said you ran the cap table. I lied. She set her phone on the desk, face up. Somebody called me. Ethan went very still. 14 months ago, Madison said. Before I ever met you. Before the search firm called, before your name was in my life at all. I got a call from a woman who wouldn't give me her name, and she asked me one question. What question? She said, if a company was quietly insolvent in 3 years and everyone in the building was too loyal to say so, would you say so? Ethan's mouth opened. I said yes, Madison said, and she said good, and she hung up, and 11 days later, a search firm I'd never heard of called me about a CFO seat at a company I'd never applied to, and the comp was insulting Ethan. It was insulting. I turned it down twice. And every time I turned it down, the offer came back better and faster than any process I've ever seen, like somebody was standing behind the recruiter telling her exactly what I needed to hear. Ethan didn't move. Say it, he said. It was her, Madison said. It was Claire. She built the search. She found me. She put my name in front of your search firm and made sure it stayed there until you said yes. That's not... Ethan stood up. No, Madison, that's insane. Why would she? Because she was leaving, Madison said. The words landed in the room like something falling from a height. 14 months ago, Madison said. Ethan, 14 months ago she started building your replacement for herself. Not your replacement. Hers. She went out and found the one person who'd tell you the truth when you didn't want it, and she got that person into the chair, and then she waited. Madison's voice finally broke just a hairline. She wasn't blindsided by the gala. She wasn't blindsided by the divorce. She'd been getting the building ready for a year because she knew she was going to have to go, and she couldn't stand the thought of 410 people losing their jobs over her marriage. Ethan sat back down. It wasn't a decision. Say something, Madison said. You knew, he said. You knew, and you let me. I did not know, Madison said hard. I found out 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I pulled a note I'd never seen in a diligence file, and I traced Meridian Bell to a Delaware shell, and I sat in my car in the garage for 2 hours. And then I wrote 4B Ethan. That's what I did with it. I wrote a clause designed to make her sign away 19% of a company she paid for because I decided you were worth protecting. She wiped her face with the back of her wrist, furious about it. And she looked at that clause for 4 minutes and told me I sat down first and she was right, and I have not slept since. Ethan stared at his desk. At the gala, he said. My hand, on your back. Madison went rigid. Say it, Ethan said. Just say it. There's nothing left to protect. Nothing ever happened. That's not what I asked. I know, Madison said. Nothing ever happened, and I let her think it might, and I've been trying to figure out for 2 days why I did that, and the answer is ugly. The answer is, I wanted to be the one you looked at. Not because I wanted you, because in 10 years of that marriage you never once looked at her, and I couldn't understand what it would feel like to be looked at like that by someone that powerful, and the only way to find out was to stand where she was standing. She looked up. And now I know. It's cold, Ethan. It's the coldest place I've ever stood in my life, and she stood in it for 4 years, and she never said a word. The office was silent. Am I fired? Madison said. Ethan laughed once hollow. By Friday, I don't think I get to fire anybody. At 2:15, Ethan Whitmore booked a seat on a commercial flight to New York coach because the plane was leased and the lease was in review, and his lawyer had said the word optics 4 times in 9 minutes. At 2:40, Priya Raman knocked on his open door. Come in. She didn't come in. I'm putting in my notice. Ethan looked up. Priya, 2 weeks. It's on your calendar. I put it there so you'd see it because you don't read email anymore. You read the calendar. Her voice was perfectly level. I have another offer. From who? Priya didn't answer. Ethan closed his eyes. She told you to take the call. She told me to update my resume, Priya said. She said don't work for somebody you're afraid to leave. And then finally the level broke, and Priya Raman said something Ethan Whitmore carried for the rest of his life. I wasn't afraid of you, Ethan. That's the thing. 6 years I was never once afraid of you. I was afraid of what you turned into by about year 7, and I kept thinking he'll come back. He'll come back. She's still here, so he must be coming back. She swallowed. And then she left, and I thought, oh, she stopped waiting. And if she stopped waiting, who am I to keep waiting? Ethan couldn't look at her. There were 11 weeks, Priya said. In year 2, she brought lunch for the whole floor. Every day, she'd come in at 11:40, and she'd never let anybody thank her, and she'd always ask about your mother. Do you know what she was doing? Feeding people. She was counting, Priya said. She was counting how many desks still had somebody at them because you wouldn't tell her, and she couldn't ask you, so she counted lunches. She left. At 8:55 that night, Ethan Whitmore walked into a hotel lobby on the Upper East Side, and a woman he'd never met stood up from a chair and said, Mr. Whitmore, she's not here. Who are you? My name is Grant Hollis's associate, and that's all you're getting, the woman said. She's not here. She's not going to be here, and I've been sitting in this lobby for 5 hours because Mr. Hollis said you'd try. I need 11 minutes. You need a lawyer. Please. The woman's face did something complicated. Sir, she said, I'm going to tell you one thing and I'm going to get in trouble for it, and I'm doing it because my mother was married to a man like you for 26 years. Do not chase her. Whatever this is, whatever you think saying the right sentence is going to do not chase her. Because the one thing you can still give that woman is the experience of being left alone, and it's the only thing you've got left that she'd actually want. Ethan stood in the lobby for a long time after she was gone. At 6 o'clock the next morning, he was standing outside the Sterling Global building on Park Avenue with a paper cup of coffee he never drank. He stood there for 5 hours and 20 minutes. Nobody stopped him. Nobody asked him to leave. That was somehow the most humiliating part, that at the peak of his fame, at the height of the news cycle, with his face on every screen in America, he could stand outside a building on Park Avenue for 5 hours and 20 minutes, and not one person came out to make him go away, because it did not occur to anyone inside that he mattered enough to be a problem. At 11:22, the door opened. Grant Hollis said, She'll give you 11 minutes. Ethan's throat closed. Why 11? Because you asked for 11, Hollis said, and she doesn't round up for anybody. At 11:31, Ethan Whitmore walked into a room and saw his wife for the first time in 3 days. She was standing. There were 4 other people in the room, and she didn't ask any of them to leave, and Ethan understood immediately that this was deliberate, and that he was going to have to do it in front of witnesses, and that she had chosen that on purpose, because she knew he'd rather die. "Claire, you have 11 minutes, she said. "Grant's counting. Can we—" "No. Claire, please not in front of—" "They stay." She didn't raise her voice. She never raised her voice. "I stood in a corner for 4 years while you talked, Ethan. Every one of these people has heard my name said badly by somebody in your industry. They stay." Ethan looked at the floor. 10 minutes, 40 seconds, Hollis said. "You knew all along," Ethan said. Claire's expression didn't change. "That's what you came for. I need to hear it." "Yes, I knew all along. I've known since I was born. I knew when you asked me for my number outside a copy shop on Guadalupe Street, and I told you my name was Claire Whitfield, and I knew when I changed it on the lease so you wouldn't Google it, and I knew every single day for 10 years. She folded her hands. "I knew who I was, Ethan. I just wanted to know who you were without knowing my name." "That's a test," Ethan said. "That's Claire, that's a 10-year test. You tested me for 10 years. "Yes," Claire said. He hadn't expected that. He'd expected a fight. He'd built the whole flight around the fight. "You're not going to argue. Why would I argue it's true?" She looked at him steadily. "I put you in a lab for a decade, and I never told you the experiment was running, and that is the worst thing I have ever done to a human being, and I will carry it until I die. You want that? Take it. It's yours. It's the only thing I'm giving you today." "Then," Ethan's voice cracked, "then how is any of this my fault?" "It isn't," Claire said. The room went absolutely silent. "It isn't your fault," Claire said. "That's what you don't understand, and it's what's going to take you 10 years to understand. This isn't a court, Ethan. Nobody's assigning fault. I'm not leaving because you failed a test. Failing a test would mean there was a right answer, and you missed it. Then what?" "You passed for 6 years," Claire said, and that was the thing that finally broke him. "You passed for 6 years," she said, and her voice did something then, the smallest thing, and every person in that room looked at the table. "Every day for 6 years you got up and you were kind to people who couldn't do anything for you. You gave Owen your car. You cried at Dale's daughter's christening. You called my father's company evil once at dinner to my face because of a rail contract in 17 and you didn't know. And I sat there and let you say it, and I was so proud of you I couldn't breathe. Very saucy, Claire." 6 years, Claire said. "That's not a test, Ethan. That's a marriage. I wasn't testing you. I stopped testing you in year 2. I was just married to you, and I was happier than anyone I have ever met. And then somewhere around the Series C, something started coming out of you, and I told myself it was pressure." 6 minutes 40, Hollis said quietly. "And then," Ethan said. "And then the money got real," Claire said. "And I watched a man I love discover that people would laugh at his jokes now. That's all it was. There's no villain in this. Nobody corrupted you. You just found out one day that you could say anything and a room would laugh, and Ethan, that's a drug, and I have watched it eat 40 men in my family, and I recognized it the way you recognize a smell from childhood, and I told myself not him, not him. He gave Owen his car." Ethan was crying. He wasn't aware of it. "When did you know?" he said. "Sarah Kimball," Claire said. "What?" "Year 5. She was going to quit. She was your 3rd engineer. And she was going to quit because you humiliated her in a design review, and I got in my car and I drove to her apartment and I sat on her floor for 4 hours and I talked her out of it." Claire's hands were perfectly still. "And when I got home, you asked me where I'd been, and I said with a friend, and you said, 'Funny, I didn't know you had any.'" Somebody in the room inhaled. "And you didn't mean it," Claire said. "That's what I need you to hear. You didn't mean it. You were tired, you'd had a bad day, and you said a small mean thing to your wife on a Tuesday. That's all. And I stood in that kitchen and I thought, oh, he started using me for the overflow." "Claire." 4 minutes, Hollis said. "So no?" Claire said, "You didn't fail my test. You did something much simpler than that. You got what you wanted, and it turned out that what you wanted was to be the only real person in the room." Ethan Whitmore stood in front of $900 billion worth of people and could not think of a single sentence. "The note," he said finally. 19%. "Yes. Why didn't you convert?" "Because I didn't want it." "Claire, that's—" He laughed wetly awfully. You could have taken a fifth of my company and you didn't, and now I'm supposed to just— Ethan. She said his name gently, and it was the gentleness that killed him. I have never wanted your company. I have never wanted your money. I have $1.2 trillion. Do you understand? Do you understand what that number means? It means the entire 10 years, every single day, I was choosing you, not accepting you, choosing you. Every morning I woke up in a house I could have bought 40,000 of, and I chose to stay in it, and you thought I was lucky to be there. Ethan put his hands on the back of a chair to hold himself up. 2 minutes, Hollis said. So take the money now, Ethan said, desperate. Take it. Take all of it. Take the company. Take my name. I'll sign it. I'll sign it right now. I don't care. That's the saddest thing you've ever said, Claire said. Why? Because it means you still think this is a negotiation, she said. You're trying to pay me. Ethan, listen to yourself. You have finally understood that I mattered, and the very first thing you did with that understanding was try to buy me with the same money you already know I don't need. Then what do you want? Ethan shouted, and it came out of him like something tearing. What do you want from me? Tell me what to do. I'll do it. I'll do anything, Claire, just tell me what to do. And Claire Sterling looked at her husband of 10 years and said, That. Ethan stopped. That's all I ever wanted, she said. For you to ask me. That's it. That's the whole thing. One time in 10 years I wanted you to look up and ask me what I wanted. Her chin didn't move. Her eyes did. And you just did it, on the last day, at full volume, in front of strangers, because you were losing something. 30 seconds, Hollis said, and his voice wasn't steady either. Claire, Ethan said, please. Your board meets Friday, Claire said. Don't do this. Harold Kessler's going to move to remove you. Corbin Ellis is going to second it. You'll get 5 of 9 against maybe 6, and Harold's going to vote for you, and it won't be enough. She said it flatly. And Ethan, when it happens, do not fight it. Don't sue, don't leak, don't call a reporter. Why? Because there are 410 people in that building, Claire said, and if you burn it down on your way out because you're humiliated, then everything I did for 10 years was for nothing, and I will never forgive you, and that is the one threat I have ever made you in your life, and I mean every word of it. Time, Hollis said. Claire turned to go. Claire. She stopped, but she didn't turn around. Was any of it real? Ethan said. And Claire Sterling stood with her back to him and said, Ethan, I wired you $2.4 million at 1 a.m, and then I got into bed next to you and let you tell me about your day. She walked out. At 11:44, Ethan Whitmore was standing alone in a conference room on the 51st floor when the door opened again, and it wasn't Claire. It was an old man. Mr. Whitmore, William Sterling said. Sit down. Ethan didn't sit down. Suit yourself. William took a chair anyway slowly. An old man's slowness, and Ethan understood with a lurch that this was theater, that this man could probably still run a mile, that everything about him was a decision. I know who you are, Ethan said. You didn't for 10 years. Say what you came to say. William Sterling looked at him for a long moment. You gave a boy your car, he said. Ethan's head came up. Year 1, William said. Owen, Chevy Malibu, 140,000 miles. You told everybody you sold it. She told me. She calls me twice a year, Mr. Whitmore. That's it, twice a year. And in year 1, she called me in November, and she told me that story, and she cried. He folded his hands. I want you to understand something. I did not like you. I have never liked you. You were a loud boy from Odessa with a chip on your shoulder and no education, and I ran you 11 ways in a week and found nothing but debt and a dead father. Nights. Get to it. And she called me in November and told me about the car, William said, and I hung up the phone and I sat in the dark for an hour, and then I did the only thing I have ever done for you in my life. Ethan's stomach dropped. What did you do? Nothing, William Sterling said. What? Nothing, he repeated. That's what I did, for 10 years. Do you know what I could have done? I could have made you. I could have picked you up in 2016 and put you in a chair at the top of this country, and you'd have been in a magazine in 9 months. And every day for 10 years I sat here and I did nothing because my daughter asked me not to, because she said, Dad, if you touch him, he'll never know what he is. He leaned forward. I honored that, William said. It is the hardest thing I have ever done, and you spent it. You spent 10 years of the most expensive restraint in the history of American capital, and you didn't even know you were spending it, and then you stood in an office and told her she lived in your shadow. Ethan couldn't breathe. Now here's why I'm here, William Sterling said, and he stood up. Friday, your board is going to take your company, and you are going to want to do something loud, because that's what you are. That's what you've always been, and there will be a lawyer in your ear telling you that you have leverage. I don't have leverage. You have one thing, William said. You have the note. You can go to that board Friday morning and tell them your ex-wife holds a convertible instrument for 19% of the company that she has not converted. And Mr. Whitmore, if you do that, the stock goes to 0 in an hour, and Harold Kessler's retirement goes with it, and you get to walk out of the wreckage saying she did it. The room was very quiet. That's the play, William said. It's a real play. Any man in this building would run it. Why are you telling me this? William Sterling walked to the door. Because she wouldn't, he said. Because she'd rather lose than tell you it exists. Because she made me promise not to say a word to you about it, and I just broke that promise for the first time in 38 years. He put his hand on the doorframe. So now you have it. It's Wednesday. You've got 42 hours. Why? Ethan said. Why would you do that? And William Sterling turned around and said the sentence Ethan Whitmore would hear for the rest of his life. Because I want to see what you do with a gun when nobody's holding you back. He left, and at 11:52 on a Wednesday morning, Ethan Whitmore stood alone in a room 51 floors above Park Avenue, holding the only weapon he had left, and understood finally and completely exactly what kind of man he was about to find out he was. At 4:10 that Wednesday afternoon, Ethan Whitmore called a lawyer he had not spoken to in 7 years. Ethan Whitmore, the man said, I've been watching TV. You look like hell. Bernard, I need 40 minutes. You need a priest. I need 40 minutes, and I need you to tell me the truth even if I don't want it. And Bernard, that's why it's you. Because in 2019 you told me not to take the Series C terms, and I called you a coward, and you were right. A pause on the line. Well, Bernard Ochoa said, that's the first true sentence anybody's said to me all week. Come on. At 6:35 in an office above a dry cleaner in Queens, because Bernard Ochoa did not believe in Manhattan rent, Ethan laid it out. All of it. The note. 19.2. The trigger. The 42 hours. Bernard listened without writing anything down. When it was over, he sat back and looked at the ceiling for a long time. Say it, Ethan said. You want me to tell you if it works? Yes, it works, Bernard said. Ethan's stomach turned over. It works beautifully, Bernard said. It's the cleanest thing I've seen in 30 years. Friday morning, you walk into that room and you say the words convertible instrument and 19.2% and undisclosed related party financing. And Ethan, listen to me. You don't even have to threaten anybody. You just say it and sit down. And here's what happens. Kessler can't remove you because the second he does that note is held by a hostile party with no CEO to negotiate against. And the equity story collapses and Kessler's fund is at 91% concentration in your paper because that man believed in you and he goes home to his wife at 74 years old and tells her about it. Ethan didn't move. So he doesn't move to remove you, Bernard said. He moves to keep you, and he hates himself for it, and you stay CEO, and in about 6 weeks, the story flips. It becomes Sterling heiress hid $1 trillion stake in her husband's company for a decade. Not CEO didn't know his wife. Her name goes in the headline where yours is now. And then a subcommittee calls her, Bernard said. Because Sterling Global has 406 positions, and a woman running a shell that owns a fifth of a defense-adjacent AI company through a Delaware entity nobody disclosed is a very interesting phone call for a certain kind of senator. She's clean, Ethan. She'd survive it. But it'd be 2 years of her life and her father's name in a hearing room, and William Sterling is 71. Ethan sat with that. You asked, Bernard said, how long do I have? To decide Friday 9 a.m. Bernard leaned forward. But son, that's not the question. The question is what you do afterward. Because I've done this a long time, and here's what nobody tells you. You'd win, and then you'd be a man who won. At 9:20 that night, Ethan Whitmore sat in a hotel room in Queens with the notebook in his lap. He'd carried it on the plane. He hadn't been able to leave it in Texas. Things to fix before he notices. He read page 41 again. He read it 11 times. Then he turned to the back, which he hadn't done because he'd been afraid, and the last entry was dated 4 months ago, and it said, he told a story at the Hendricks dinner about the bathroom floor. Told it as a joke. Everyone laughed. He said, I sat there and told myself I'm not done. Under it in the same pen harder so the paper tore slightly. I was there. I was on the floor with him. I have been erased from the only night of his life that mattered, and he doesn't know he did it. And I can't tell him because then he'd know I was watching him do it. And under that, the last line she ever wrote in it, I think I'm going to have to leave. I think I've known for a while. I don't know how to leave someone who doesn't know I'm here. Ethan Whitmore put his face in his hands and made a sound that brought the man in the next room to the wall. At 7 o'clock Thursday morning, Madison Carter's phone rang. Where are you? Austin, she said. Where you should be. Ethan Friday is in 26 hours, and Devereaux has been calling me all night saying you found something. I found something. Ethan, I'm going to send you a photo, he said, of a page. Look at it and call me back. He hung up. 90 seconds later, his phone rang. Where did you get this? Madison said, and her voice was wrong. Kitchen drawer. Ethan, there are numbers on this page. Paper rustling. This is year 6. Ethan. She has our free cash flow on a gas station notepad. 9 days before the audit closed. That number wasn't in a deck yet. That number wasn't anywhere yet. I know. How did she... She counted lunches, Madison. Silence. What are you going to do? Madison said. Bernard says it works. That's not what I asked. I know it's not. Ethan. Her voice dropped. Ethan, I need you to hear this from the only person in your life who has no reason to lie to you anymore. If you use it, I'll draft it. I'll write it clean. I'll write it so tight that not one lawyer in this country could break it. And I'll sit next to you Friday, and I'll say the words myself if your voice won't work. A breath. And then I'll quit, and I'll never say your name again as long as I live, and Ethan. And then, I want you to understand that I'd rather be the person who wrote 4B for the rest of my life than watch you do it. At 11:15 Thursday morning, Harold Kessler answered a call from a number he didn't know. Harold? Ethan. Harold's voice was careful. Son, I'm not supposed to talk to you. Counsel's very clear on that. I know. Hang up if you need to. I'm not hanging up. Harold, how much of your fund is in my paper? The pause was too long. That's not your business. How much? 91%, Harold Kessler said. Are you happy 91? I'm 74 years old, my wife's got a bad hip, and a house in Fredericksburg she loves, and I put 91% of everything I've got into a kid from Odessa because he called me at 1:40 in the morning about server racks. He stopped. No, that's a lie. She called me. It was her. That's who called. Ethan closed his eyes. Harold. What? On Friday when Ellis moves to remove me. Vote for it. The line went completely silent. What did you say? Vote to remove me, Ethan said. Don't stand up for me. Don't make the speech. Harold, I know you. You've got a speech, you've been writing it since Tuesday, and it's about the car and the boy in Odessa, and I am asking you not to give it. Ethan, because if you defend me, Ethan said, and you lose, they'll take your seat next. Ellis has wanted the chair since 22, and he'll frame it as loyalty over fiduciary duty, and it'll be an easy vote, and you'll spend your last good years in a deposition instead of Fredericksburg. Harold Kessler didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said thickly, Who is this man, Harold? No, I mean it. Who is this? Because the man I talked to Monday morning called a woman saving 300 jobs a hostile act. His voice broke, and he didn't apologize for it. Ethan, son, where the hell have you been? At 2:40. Thursday afternoon, Claire Sterling was in a meeting about the Reno transition when Grant Hollis put a phone in front of her face up. Don't answer it, he said. I'm showing you because you'd want to know and because I don't hide things from you. But don't answer it. Claire looked at the screen. Ethan, It rang 6 times and stopped. "Good," Hollis said. Then it rang again, and stopped, and rang again. "Ma'am," Hollis said, "with respect, this is the part your father warned you about. It's day 6. It's exactly day 6. Claire looked at him. "Grant, ma'am. How many people in this building would tell me that I don't understand?" "How many people," Claire said, "in this entire company would look at me and say, 'Don't answer it, that's a mistake'?" She picked up the phone and turned it face down. 2. You and my father. That's the number. 2 out of 11,000 employees. Do you know how many people told Ethan Whitmore no in the last 4 years? Hollis said nothing. 0, Claire said. "I counted. That's what I did instead of leaving. I counted." The phone buzzed once more. A voicemail. "Play it," Claire said. "Claire, play it, Grant. I'm 38. I'm not going to be protected from a voice." Hollis pressed it. Ethan's voice filled the room, and it was flat and exhausted and completely without performance, and Claire Sterling put one hand on the table. "Claire, I'm not calling to ask you for anything. I want you to know that first, so you can stop bracing." A pause. Traffic. "Your father came to see me Wednesday. He told me about the note. He told me I could use it Friday and that it'd work, and he's right, it'd work. Bernard Ochoa says it's the cleanest thing he's seen in 30 years. Another pause. "I'm not calling to tell you I won't do it. I don't want credit for that. That's the kind of thing I'd have done a year ago, call you up and announce I'm being decent, so you'd have to say thank you." A long breath. "I read the notebook. All of it. The last page, too." His voice went somewhere Claire had never heard it go. "Claire, the Hendricks dinner. I told that story as a joke. I've told it 11 times. And I want you to know, I've been sitting here trying to remember the actual night, the real one, and I can't get the room without you in it. You're in it. You're on the floor. Your hand was on the back of my neck and you kept saying, 'Breathe, breathe.' We're not done. That's the memory. That's what's actually in my head. And somewhere along the way, I started telling it without you. And I don't know when I did that. And it wasn't a decision. And that's the worst part, Claire. It wasn't even a decision. It cut off, came back. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not going to ask you that. I know what I am now. I'm calling because there's nobody else on earth who was there, and I needed one person alive to know I remember it right." The message ended. Nobody in the room moved. Claire Sterling sat perfectly still for 11 seconds. Grant Hollis counted because he had learned it from her. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "do you want the room?" "No," Claire said. "Claire?" "No," she said. "I sat in a corner for 4 years, so nobody would see. I'm not doing it in reverse." She stood up. "Delete it," she said. "Ma'am, delete it, Grant." He deleted it. And then, Claire Sterling said to a room of 9 people in a completely level voice, "Where were we the Reno head count?" And Grant Hollis, who had worked for the Sterling family for 11 years, watched a woman pick up a pen with a hand that wasn't shaking, and understood for the first time what her father had actually built. At 4 o'clock Thursday afternoon, William Sterling's private line rang, and it was his daughter, and she did not say hello. "You told him about the note." Silence. "Dad?" "I did." "You gave a drowning man a weapon and you pointed it at me." "I did." "Why?" William Sterling was quiet for a moment. "Because you were going to spend the rest of your life wondering," he said. "Claire, you'd have gone to Reno, and you'd have built something beautiful, and you'd have been magnificent, and at 3 in the morning for 40 years, you'd have lain awake asking the same question. Was he ever going to become a man, or did I just love a boy who got lucky, and nobody could have answered it? Not me, not a therapist, not God." His voice went rough. "So I gave him the gun. Because a man is what he does when nobody's stopping him, and you deserve to know, once, cleanly, before you're my age. That wasn't yours to do." "No," William said. "It wasn't. And I did it anyway, and if you want to be angry at me for the rest of my life, you're entitled, and I'd do it again tomorrow." Claire didn't say anything. "Sweetheart," William Sterling said, "ask me the question." "No." Ask me. I said no. Claire. Her father's voice cracked all the way for the first time since 1994. Ask me the question. And Claire Sterling, 38 years old, heir to $1.2 trillion, standing alone in a hallway on the 51st floor, said, "Do you think he'll use it?" And William Sterling said, "I don't know." At 8 o'clock Friday morning, the board of Whitmore Technologies convened in Austin, Texas, and there were 9 directors present, and Ethan Whitmore was the last one in the room. He was carrying nothing. Corbin Ellis noticed first. "Where's your counsel?" "Not coming." "Ethan, that's not advisable. We have Corbin is Devereaux on the line." "He's on the line." "Hi, Devereaux," Ethan said. "You're fired." Somebody laughed and then stopped. At 9 o'clock, Harold Kessler called it to order, and his hands were shaking so badly he set them on the table. "There's a motion," he said. "Corbin, I move for the removal of Ethan Whitmore as Chief Executive Officer of Whitmore Technologies, effective immediately for cause on grounds of material misjudgment in the Reno transaction, failure to disclose a related party financing instrument, and loss of confidence." Second. 4 voices. "Discussion," Harold said, and his eyes came up. "Ethan, you have the floor. Take as long as you want." Ethan Whitmore stood up. Madison Carter was in the corner by the door with a legal pad in her lap and a document on her phone that she had drafted at 2 in the morning, airtight 400 words, the single best thing she had ever written, and her thumb was resting on it. "Harold," Ethan said, "how long have I got?" "As long as you want, son." "Then I only need a minute." He looked around the table. "There's a convertible note," Ethan said. Madison's head came up so fast her pad hit the floor. The room went absolutely still. "Held by an entity called Meridian Bell LLC, $2.4 million year 2. It converts at holder's option on 9 triggers. Trigger 6 is a change in the marital status of the holder." He said it evenly. "The holder is Claire Sterling. Post-conversion with the anti-dilution stack, it comes to 19.2% of this company. It is as of this morning unconverted." Nobody breathed. Corbin Ellis said very slowly, "Ethan, do you understand what you've just done?" "Yes." "You've just—" Ellis stood up. "That's not leverage, that's a confession. If that instrument exists and it was never disclosed—" "It was disclosed," Ethan said. 8 years ago, filed properly. Schedule 3.4 Subordinated Instruments, Exhibit 12. It's been in every diligence package since 2018, and not one person in this room ever read line 11, including me. It wasn't hidden, Corbin. It was boring." He almost smiled. "That's the whole story of my life, it turns out. Nobody hid anything from me. It was just boring and I didn't look." Harold Kessler had gone gray. "Son, why are you telling us this?" "Because you're about to vote," Ethan said, "and you deserve to vote knowing." "Ethan," Madison was on her feet. "Ethan, don't—" "Sit down, Madison." "Ethan, listen to me. You can frame this. We can frame this. There's a version where—" "Madison." He looked at her. "Sit down, please." She sat down. Ethan turned back to the table. "Here's what I could do," he said. "I could tell you all of that and then sit here and let you work it out for yourselves, that she's hostile. That if you take my chair, she converts, and you're negotiating with a $1 trillion family with no CEO and no relationship. Kessler, you're at 91% concentration, so that math ends you. Ellis, your LPs are looking at a mark that goes to nothing on a Tuesday." He paused. "I wouldn't even have to say it out loud. I'd just have to say the number and shut up, and you'd all get there yourselves in about 90 seconds, and then you'd vote to keep me. Not because you want me, because you'd be scared." Ellis's mouth was open. "That's the play," Ethan said. "Bernard Ochoa says it's the cleanest he's seen in 30 years. Her own father drove to a room on Park Avenue and handed it to me on Wednesday because he wanted to see what I'd do with it." "And," Harold said, "and what are you doing with it?" Ethan Whitmore put both hands on the back of his chair. "She's not going to convert," he said. The room made a sound. "She's never going to convert," Ethan said. "She's had 8 years, and she's had this week, and she had the moment she signed, and she didn't. And she's not going to because taking it would mean she wanted it, and that woman would rather lose every dollar on earth than let anybody believe the last 10 years were a transaction." He looked at Harold. So the note is not a risk. It's a fact about a person. And I'm telling you that because I'm the only man alive who knows it. And if I let you vote scared, I'd be using the last true thing I know about my wife as a weapon against 9 people who trusted me. Nobody spoke. Vote, Ethan said. Vote clean. Vote like the note doesn't exist because it doesn't, not the way you're afraid of. And Harold Kessler's face was wet. Vote to remove me, Ethan said. You've got a speech. Don't give it. Fredericksburg. He sat down. At 9:14 a.m., the board of Whitmore Technologies voted 7-2 to remove Ethan Whitmore as chief executive officer of the company he had founded in a 1-bedroom apartment 11 years earlier. Harold Kessler voted yes. He was crying when he did it, and his voice didn't work, and he had to raise his hand instead, and Corbin Ellis, who was not a soft man, looked away. At 9:22, Ethan Whitmore walked out of the building he'd put his name on. Priya Raman was standing in the lobby. You're supposed to be at your new job, Ethan said. I start Monday. Priya. I came for the badge, she said. They asked somebody to take your badge and I didn't want it to be security. 6 years. I wasn't going to let it be security. Ethan took the badge off and put it in her hand, and neither of them could look at the other. Priya, don't. Thank you, he said. For 6 years. I never said it. Not once. I checked. I went back through 6 years of email last night, and I never said thank you to you one time, and I want you to know I looked because I was hoping I had. Priya Raman stood in the lobby of Whitmore Technologies, holding a plastic rectangle, and cried in front of everyone. At 11:40, Grant Hollis walked into Claire Sterling's office and closed the door. She looked up. Say it. 7-2, Hollis said. He's out. Claire nodded. Her face didn't move. That's not what I came to say, Hollis said. Claire waited. Ma'am? Hollis had to stop and start again. He told them about the note. Claire went completely white. Sit down, Hollis said. Claire, sit down. He used it. No. Grant. He told them it exists, Hollis said, and then he told them you'd never convert. He told 9 directors that you would rather lose everything on earth than let anyone believe the last 10 years were a transaction, and he told them to vote like it doesn't exist. And then he told Kessler to vote against him and gave him a reason so Kessler could live with it. Hollis's voice was not steady. Ma'am, he had a gun, and he stood up in front of 9 people and explained exactly how it worked and why it would kill them, and then he set it down and asked them to shoot him. Claire Sterling did not move. There's a transcript, Hollis said. Do you want it? No. Claire, no. She put both hands flat on the desk. Grant, if I read it, I'll go back. I know exactly what I am. If I read the words he said, I'll be on a plane in an hour, and I'll be in his kitchen by dinner, and I'll be 29 again, and I'll spend 40 years fixing him quietly, and I'll be so happy, and it'll be the same. It'll be exactly the same. I know, Hollis said. Then don't give me the transcript. I'm not going to. Good. But ma'am, Hollis put 1 page on her desk anyway. That's not the transcript. That's a phone message. It came through the main line at 10 this morning, and it's 4 sentences, and I read it. And Claire, I've never done this in 11 years, but I'm going to sit in that chair and make you hear it, because if I don't, I'm exactly like every other person who ever told you no isn't a real word. Claire looked at the page. Read it, she said. Grant Hollis read it. Message for Claire Sterling from Ethan Whitmore, 10:04 a.m. He said, tell her I didn't use it. Tell her I'm not telling her so she'll owe me. Tell her the reason I didn't is that she was right. I only ever asked her what she wanted when I was losing something, and this is the first time in my life I've had nothing left to lose, and I still don't want anything from her. And tell her... Hollis stopped. Grant. Claire. Finish it. Grant Hollis looked at the page and finished it. And tell her I finally know what I weigh. Claire Sterling put her hand over her mouth and did not make a sound for a very long time. Then she said, Get out. Ma'am, Grant, get out. Now, please. He got out. And Claire Sterling, alone in an office on the 51st floor, sat down and put her forehead on the desk and cried for 90 seconds with a stopwatch running exactly 90, and then she stood up and washed her face and walked into a meeting about Reno headcount and did not miss a single number. At 6 o'clock that evening, Madison Carter found Ethan in a diner off the highway outside Austin, which took her 4 hours because he'd turned his phone off. She sat down across from him. "You're an idiot," she said. "Yeah. You had it. You had it, Ethan. I wrote the language, 400 words. It was the best thing I've ever written, and I've never been prouder of anything, and I stayed up all night on it, and you didn't even ask to see it." "I know. Why didn't you ask to see it?" Ethan looked up. "Because I'd have read it," he said. Madison sat there. Then she took her phone out and set it on the table and deleted the document in front of him and turned the screen around so he could see the empty folder. "Interim CEO," she said. Ethan blinked. "What? 10 this morning. Ellis moved it, seconded by Kessler." She said it flatly. "I told them I'd take it for 6 months and not 1 day longer, and I told them my first condition, and I want to tell you what it was before somebody else does." "Tell me." "Sterling gets the substrate contract," Madison said. "Published rates. No discount, no favor, no calls. I'm going to buy from that family at the worst price on earth, and I'm going to make this company survive it because, Ethan, that's the only version of this thing that's actually yours." Her jaw set. "You built something real. That's the part nobody's going to say out loud for 10 years, and it's true. It was real, and it was propped up, and both of those are true at once. And I'm going to spend 6 months finding out how much of it stands on its own." Ethan couldn't speak. "There's a second condition," Madison said. "What? You don't come back." She looked at him. "Not in 6 months. Not in 6 years. Ethan, I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing it because 410 people need to find out they work at a company and not at a man, and they can't find that out while you're in the parking lot." Ethan nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "That's it, okay? Madison, I gave a woman 10 years of okay, and she had to wire me $2.4 million to get me through a Thursday." He turned his coffee cup around. "I'm out of arguments. I ran out Wednesday at 11:52 in the morning on the 51st floor." Madison Carter looked at him for a long moment. "Ethan." "Yeah." "What are you going to do?" And Ethan Whitmore said, "I'm going to go find Owen and give him back his car." Madison frowned. "You gave him the car." "I gave him a car," Ethan said, "in year 1. And then in year 7, I told a room full of investors I'd sold it because it was a better story that way, and Owen was standing at the back." Madison went very still. "He was standing at the back," Ethan said, "and he heard me say it, and he never said a word to me about it, not once for 4 years, and he still comes in at 7 every morning." He looked up, and his eyes were red, and his voice was steady. "That's who I need to talk to, not her. I don't get to talk to her. I get to talk to Owen." He put a 20 on the table and stood up. And at 6:41 that evening, as Ethan Whitmore walked out of a diner off a Texas highway with nothing to his name but a gas station notebook, a phone across the country buzzed once on a desk on the 51st floor, and Claire Sterling looked down at a message from a number she had never seen, and it said, "Mrs. Whitmore, this is Owen. I think you should know what he just did." Claire Sterling looked at that message for a long time before she typed anything. Then she wrote Owen, "How did you get this number?" The reply came in 40 seconds. "Priya gave it to me. She said if I ever needed it, once I could use it once. This is the once." Claire's thumb hovered. "I'm listening," she wrote. At 7:15 that evening, Owen Bracey sat in his truck in a lot outside Austin with a phone against his ear and told a $1 trillion heiress about a Chevy Malibu. "Ma'am, he came to my house. Tonight, 20 minutes ago. He knocked on my door and my wife answered and she didn't recognize him. That's how bad he looks. And I came around the corner and he was standing on my porch and he said, 'Owen, I need to tell you something. And then I'm going to leave and I'm never going to bother you again.'" Claire closed her eyes. "What did he say?" "He said, I told a room full of investors that I sold that car in year 7. He said you were standing at the back, and you heard me do it, and I saw you hear it, and I kept talking." Owen's voice went unsteady. "Mrs. Whitmore, I never told anybody that. Not my wife. Nobody. 4 years I thought I was the only person on earth who knew that happened." "He saw you." He saw me, Owen said. That's what got me. He saw me hear it and he kept going, and then he carried it for 4 years and never said one word. And tonight he drove to my house to say it out loud on my porch with his hands empty. Claire didn't say anything. And then he tried to give me money, Owen said. Of course he did. That's what I said. I said, Ethan, don't. And ma'am, here's the part I called you about. Owen took a breath. He put his hand down, right away, first try. He said, you're right. I'm sorry, that's the only move I know, and I'm trying to learn another one. The line was very quiet. 10 years I worked for that man, Owen Bracey said. That's the first time I ever heard him lose an argument. At 7:30, Claire said, Owen, why are you telling me this? Because I thought you'd want to know. That's not an answer. There was a pause. No, ma'am, it isn't, Owen admitted. The real answer is I want you to come back. Everybody in that building wants you to come back. And I sat in this truck for 10 minutes before I texted you, and I know I'm doing exactly what everybody's been doing to you your whole life, which is handing you a man and asking you to fix him. Claire's throat tightened. So I'm going to say the true thing instead, Owen said. Ma'am, don't come back for him. Please don't. He'd take it. He'd take it in a second, and he'd be so grateful, and in 11 years we'd be right back here. He stopped. I just wanted somebody to know he stood on my porch. That's all. Not for a deal. Not because it fixes anything. A man did the right thing where nobody could see it, and I couldn't stand being the only one who knew. Claire Sterling sat in an office 51 floors above Park Avenue, with tears running down her face and her voice completely level. Owen. Ma'am. Thank you for telling me. Yes, ma'am. And Owen, keep the car. He laughed wet and startled. It's got 210,000 miles on it. Keep it anyway, Claire said. Somebody in this story should get to keep something. At 9 o'clock the next morning, Grant Hollis knocked on Claire's door and found her already there. How long have you been here? What's the Reno head count? Claire, the head count Grant. 312, Hollis said. 0 cuts. Deacons signed the protection covenant last night, 4 years. No reductions except for cause. Ma'am, his lawyer called me at 11 and asked what the catch was, and I said there isn't one, and he said, son, I've been doing this 30 years, and I said, sir, so have I, and we just sat on the phone. Claire nodded. Ma'am, can I ask you something? You're going to anyway. Why did you buy Reno? Claire looked up. You told the room it was because those people didn't do anything to you, Hollis said. And that's true. But Claire, I've built your models for 11 years, and that plant is a 9% asset in a portfolio that doesn't do 9%. You overpaid by $70 million, and you did it in 4 hours, and you didn't blink. He set his folder down. So what's the real reason? Claire was quiet for a moment. Curtis Hale, she said. Who? A man who let 2 kids build circuit boards in his body shop in 1994 and never got paid back and died in 2009. She looked at the window. There are Curtis Hales in every story like this, Grant. Every single one. Somebody let somebody use something for free, and then 30 years later there's a headline with one name in it, and the guy who owned the body shop is a footnote in a phone call nobody makes. Claire. I was Curtis Hale, she said. Grant Hollis didn't say anything. For 10 years, Claire said. I was the body shop, and I chose it. Grant, that's the part nobody's ever going to understand. Nobody did it to me. I built the whole thing on purpose, and then I sat in it, and I got exactly what I designed. She finally looked at him. So no, I didn't buy Reno for revenge. I bought it because Ray Deacons remembered a man's name for 31 years, and I have never once in my life met anybody in this industry who does that. At 11:40 that morning, William Sterling walked into his daughter's office without knocking, which he had done every day of her life. Sit down, Dad. I'll stand. You'll sit. You're 71 and you flew commercial to prove a point to a boy in a boardroom, and I know because Grant told me. William Sterling sat down. You're angry, he said. Yes. Good. Be angry. I'm not going to talk you out of it. Dad? Claire, I gave that man a loaded weapon and told him where you were standing, William said. That's what I did. And I'd like to tell you I knew what he'd do with it. I didn't. I stood in that room and looked at him and I thought it's about even. I put it at even, sweetheart. That's the truth. I gambled 40 years of your peace on a coin. Claire stared at him. You said you'd do it again. I would, William said. And it would still be wrong. Those are both true. Your mother taught me that, and I've never been able to unlearn it." The room went quiet. "He told them," Claire said. "I know. He stood up in front of 9 people and explained exactly how to kill me and then asked them to shoot him instead." "I know." "Dad?" Her voice finally cracked, one hairline fracture, and William Sterling saw his daughter at 9 years old in a hospital corridor. "What am I supposed to do with that?" And William Sterling said, "Nothing." Claire's head came up. "Nothing," he repeated. "Claire, listen to me. This is the last thing I'll ever teach you, and it's the hardest one. A man doing the right thing does not create a debt. That's the trick. That's the oldest trick there is, and it's the one that gets women like you because you're decent." He leaned forward. "He didn't buy anything Friday. He didn't earn anything. He just stopped being a thief for 11 minutes in a room in Austin. And if you go back to him because he finally didn't rob you, then you've priced yourself at exactly the level he was always paying." Claire Sterling put her hands over her face. "I want to go back," she said. "I know. Dad, I want to go back so badly I can't breathe." "I know, sweetheart. Tell me not to." "No," William Sterling said. Claire looked up. "No," her father said again. "I've made every decision in your life for you. I picked your schools. I picked your security detail. I picked the clause you were furious about, and you wrote a better version. And I sat here for 10 years and did nothing while you lived in a 2-bedroom house in Austin with a man who told you that you lived in his shadow, and I did nothing because you asked me to, and it nearly killed me." He stood up. "I am done deciding things for you. You're 38. Go back or don't. I'll love you exactly the same on Tuesday either way." He walked to the door. "Dad," he stopped. "You put it at even," Claire said. "The coin, what is it now?" And William Sterling said, "It's not a coin anymore. That's the whole problem, isn't it?" He left. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Ethan Whitmore walked into a plumbing supply office in Odessa, Texas, and asked for a job. The man behind the counter looked at him for a long moment. "You're the fella from the TV." "Yes, sir." "Whitmore, the AI outfit." "Not anymore." The man scratched his jaw. "Son, you got a degree?" "No, sir." "You know anything about pipe?" "No, sir." "Then why in the hell would I hire you?" And Ethan Whitmore said, "Because my father worked in this building for 19 years, and I never once came in here, and I'd like to know what he did all day." The man's face changed. "What's his name?" "Dale Whitmore." The man set down his pen. "Big Dale," he said. "Big Dale Whitmore's boy." "Yes, sir." "Son," the man said, "your daddy stayed late every Thursday for 6 years to teach a kid named Reuben how to read a manifest, and that kid runs the Midland branch now, and he cried at the funeral and you weren't there." Ethan Whitmore stood at a counter in Odessa and took it. "No, sir," he said, "I wasn't." At 4:20, Madison Carter's phone rang, and it was Harold Kessler. "Madison, it's bad." "How bad?" "Ridgeline's calling the line. Full recall 90 days. Madison closed her eyes. "On what grounds?" "Change of control. There's a clause it triggers on CEO removal, and Corbin Ellis knew about it Friday morning, and he didn't say a word." "That son of a—" "He's going to move to take the company apart," Harold said. "Sell it in 3 pieces. He's got the votes. Madison and I can't stop him because the man's not wrong. 90 days of runway and no substrate line and a founder in Odessa." Madison Carter sat down on the floor of her own office. "Harold." "Yeah." "Well, what was he like at the beginning, before I got here?" Harold Kessler was quiet a moment. "He called me at 1:40 in the morning about server racks," he said. "Except it was her. She called and put him on. He didn't know she'd done it. He thought he'd gotten there himself, and she stood in that kitchen and let him think it. And Madison, I've never in my life seen anybody love somebody like that, and I've never in my life seen anything do so much damage." At 5:05, Madison Carter did the thing she had sworn she would never do. She called Claire Sterling. It went through in 9 seconds, which told her everything. "Miss Carter." "Mrs. Whitmore." "Sterling." "Ms. Sterling." Madison's voice was shaking, and she let it. "I'm not calling for money. I want that said in the first sentence because I know what the second sentence sounds like." "Say the second sentence." "Ridgeline's calling the line. Ellis wants to break the company into 3 pieces and sell it, and there are 410 people who are going to find out on a Tuesday from a press release. Madison stopped. I'm not asking you to save it. I'm asking you a question, and then I'm going to hang up and I'll never call you again as long as I live. Ask. Was it worth building? Madison said. Silence. Ms. Sterling, I have to know. Not was he worth it. Not was the marriage worth it. The company. The thing. You put $2.4 million in it at 1 a.m, 8 years ago, and you never took a dollar out, and you had every chance, and you never converted, and I am the only person left holding it, and I need to know from the only person who was there at the start. Her voice broke completely. Was it worth building, or was I standing in a cold room for 14 months for a thing that was never real? Claire Sterling was quiet for 11 seconds. Then she said, Miss Carter, do you know why I picked you? Madison couldn't speak. I called 211 people, Claire said. 14 months. I asked all of them the same question. Would you say the thing nobody once said? And 210 of them said yes immediately, because that's what people say. And me, you said yes, Claire said. And then you were quiet for 4 seconds. And then you said, but I'd want to be sure I was right first, because I've been wrong loud before and somebody paid for it. Her voice didn't waver. That's why. That's the entire reason. 211 people, and you were the only one who'd ever been wrong out loud and remembered what it cost. Madison Carter sat on her office floor and put her hand over her mouth. Was it worth building? Claire repeated. Yes, it was worth building. It was the best thing I ever touched, and I'd do the whole 10 years again for the 2nd year alone. A pause. And Miss Carter, I'm not going to save it. I know. Do you? Because I need you to understand why, and I need you to hear it from me and not from a lawyer. Claire's voice went very steady. If I put $1 into that company right now, then in 3 years, when it works, every person alive will say the Sterling money saved it, and you will spend the rest of your career being the woman who got rescued. And Miss Carter, I have been the person in the room who everyone assumed was carried. I've done 4 years of it. I would not put a dog through it. Madison closed her eyes. So no, Claire said. You get nothing from me. You get published rates and a fair queue and 11 weeks like everybody on Earth, and if you save it, and nobody will ever be able to take it off you. Not Ellis, not the press, not him. That might not be enough. No, Claire said. It might not, but it's the only gift I have that's actually a gift. The line was quiet. Ms. Sterling, Madison said. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About the gala, about his hand, about all of it. And Claire Sterling said, Miss Carter, you were 29 and somebody powerful looked at you. I've watched 40 men in my family do worse for less. Go save your company. At 8 o'clock the next morning, Madison Carter walked into a board meeting in Austin, Texas, and Corbin Ellis had a slide deck. 3 pieces, Ellis said. Enterprise to Vantic. Research to whoever'll take it. The rest to salvage. We recover 60 cents on the dollar and everybody goes home. No, Madison said. Madison, I've got the votes. You've got 6, she said. You need 7 for a sale of substantially all assets. It's in the charter. Section 9 and Corbin. I want you to know that I read Section 9 at 4 this morning, and you didn't, because you've never read anything all the way through in your life. Ellis's face went red. Harold's with me, Madison said. That's 3. And I'm going to spend the next 40 minutes getting a 4th, and then you're going to sit there while I do it. On what basis? Ellis snapped. You've got 90 days and no substrate. I have 11 weeks in a public queue, Madison said, and I have a company that a woman with $1.2 trillion looked at for 10 years and never once tried to own. Do you understand what that means, Corbin? She could have taken it. 8 years, any day, any hour. She never did. She put both hands on the table. Not because she's nice, because she's the best evaluator of businesses in the Western Hemisphere, and she looked at this thing every single day for a decade and decided it should stand up by itself. The room was silent. You want to sell it for 60 cents? Madison said. The most sophisticated capital allocator alive spent 10 years saying it's worth more than that and paid $2.4 million for the privilege of never mentioning it. So you can vote to break it up. Or you can be the guys who sold the thing she wouldn't take for free." Harold Kessler started to laugh. "Oh, that's good," he said. "Oh, son of a gun, that's good." At 9:50, the board of Whitmore Technologies voted 5-4 against liquidation. At 10:30, Corbin Ellis resigned. At 10:45, Harold Kessler called Fredericksburg and told his wife he'd be another year. At 11 o'clock, Madison Carter walked out onto the floor of a company with 90 days of cash and 410 people looking at her and said, "All right, here's where we actually are," and told them the truth, all of it, the number, the queue, the 11 weeks, and nobody left. That was the part nobody ever wrote about. Nobody left. At 6 o'clock that evening in Odessa, Texas, Ethan Whitmore's phone rang while he was learning how to read a manifest from a man named Reuben who had never forgiven him for missing a funeral. "Ethan Whitmore." "It's Madison." He stepped outside. "Tell me." 5-4. "Ellis is gone. Kessler's chairman. We're alive." Ethan Whitmore leaned against a wall in Odessa and put his hand over his eyes. "How?" he said. "I used her," Madison said. "I used her name in that room, and I want you to know I did it because I'm not going to be another person in this story who takes something from that woman quietly." "Does she know? I'm calling her next." "Madison." Ethan's voice went strange. "Don't tell her it worked." "What?" "Tell her you used it," he said. "Tell her exactly what you said. But don't tell her it worked, because if it worked, she saved it, and she'll know she saved it, and she'll spend the rest of her life knowing she couldn't help herself." He swallowed. "Let her have one thing she didn't fix." Madison Carter stood in a stairwell in Austin for a long time. "Ethan, yeah, that's the first time in 3 years you've said something I couldn't improve." 3 years passed. At 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning in March in a conference room in Reno, Nevada, Claire Sterling stood in front of 312 people who had been told for 3 years that a billionaire was going to shut them down and had every year been wrong. "Mr. Deakins wants me to say something inspiring," she said. "I'm not going to." Somebody laughed. "I'm going to tell you about a man named Curtis Hale," Claire said. At 11 o'clock that same morning in Austin, Texas, Madison Carter rang a bell she had refused to install for 2 years because Whitmore Technologies had just closed its first profitable quarter with no outside capital at published rates at the back of a public queue 11 weeks at a time for 3 years. Priya Raman was in the room. She had come back in year 2. "Say something," Priya said. Madison looked around at 440 people. "It stands up," she said. And that was all she said, and it was the best speech anyone in that building ever heard. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, Claire Sterling's phone buzzed. Grant Hollis said, "Ma'am, Austin closed the quarter. Clean." Claire looked out the window for a long moment. "Good," she said. "That's it. What do you want me to say, Grant?" "Ma'am, you've been reading their filings for 3 years. Every quarter, line by line. I've watched you do it." Hollis's voice was gentle. "You've never said a word. Not once. 3 years." Claire didn't answer. "He's still in Odessa," Hollis said. "I didn't ask." "No, ma'am, you didn't. You never have, and that's why I'm telling you." Hollis set a page down. "He runs a branch, 14 people. He hasn't given one interview. 4 networks offered him money to tell his side, and he said no to all of them. And ma'am, one of them offered him $2 million, and he turned it down over the phone in 11 seconds. Claire's hand went still on the desk. "There's a book," Hollis said, "about the whole thing. It's coming out in the fall, and it's not kind to you. It says you engineered it. It says the Trillionaire's daughter dismantled a man for sport." "Let it." "Claire." "Grant, I said let it." "They asked him for a comment," Hollis said. Claire looked up. "They asked him for a comment," Hollis repeated, "and he gave one. It's the only public statement he's made in 3 years, and I've got it here, and I'm going to read it to you whether you want me to or not, because I did this once before and you didn't fire me." Claire Sterling closed her eyes. "Read it," she said. And Grant Hollis read, "My ex-wife did not destroy my company. She stopped paying for it. There is a difference, and it took me 42 years to learn it, and I learned it from her, and she was the best business person I ever met, and I called her a woman who lived in my shadow out loud on purpose, because it made me feel bigger in a room. That's the whole story. There isn't another version. Anyone who tells you she engineered this is telling you a story about a powerful woman, because it's easier than telling you a story about an ordinary man. The office was very quiet. That's all of it, Claire said. No, ma'am. There's one more line. Read it. Grant Hollis's voice was not steady. He said, "Tell her I know what I weigh now, and it isn't much, and it's mine." Claire Sterling sat in an office 51 floors above Park Avenue and did not cry and did not move and did not speak for a very long time. Then she said, "Grant, ma'am, get me a car." Hollis went pale. "Claire, not to Odessa," she said. At 7 o'clock that evening, Claire Sterling knocked on a door in Fredericksburg, Texas, and a 77-year-old man opened it in a cardigan and nearly fell over. "Harold." "Oh, my lord. Can I come in?" Harold Kessler stepped back and yelled for his wife, and his wife came and looked at Claire and burst into tears, and Claire Sterling sat at a kitchen table in Fredericksburg and drank the worst coffee of her life and let an old woman hold her hand. "You called me at 1:40 in the morning," Harold said. "I did. Server racks. I did. Claire." Harold's eyes were wet. "Why'd you put him on the phone? You had me. You had me at hello. Why'd you put him on?" And Claire Sterling said the truest thing she had ever said out loud. "Because I wanted him to have it," she said. "That's the whole answer, Harold. That's the whole 10 years in one sentence. I wanted him to have it. Everything. All of it. I wanted him to have things so badly that I made myself invisible so he wouldn't have to share, and I called it love. And I was wrong." Harold Kessler's wife squeezed her hand. "It wasn't love," Claire said. "It was a gift nobody can carry. I handed a man a whole life and told him he built it, and then I got angry when he believed me." She looked up. "He didn't lie to me, Harold. I lied to him. Every day for 10 years, and he was a coward about it, and I was a coward about it. And we were both cowards in different directions, and the only difference is his kind of coward makes headlines." Nobody said anything. Then Harold Kessler said, "Are you going to go see him?" And Claire Sterling said, "No." "Claire." "No," she said. "And I want to tell you why. Because you're the only person who was there at 1:40 in the morning and you get an answer." Harold waited. "And it had sit in that house with us for 40 years. Harold Kessler put his face in his hands. "So no," Claire said. "I'm not going to Odessa. I got what I wanted." "What did you want?" And Claire Sterling looked at an old man in a cardigan in a kitchen in Fredericksburg and said, "I wanted to find out if he'd have picked me up off the floor. That's all. That's the whole 10 years. That's the whole $1 trillion. That's every single thing I've ever wanted in my life. One time when it cost him everything, would he pick me up off the floor?" Her chin didn't move. "And on a Friday morning in Austin in front of 9 people with a gun in his hand, he did. He picked me up off the floor, and it cost him his company, and he never told me." The kitchen was silent. "I know now," Claire Sterling said. "I know Harold. That's it. That's the answer to the question I've had since I was 9 years old. And I don't have to move to Odessa and spend 40 years testing it because it's already answered and nobody can take it away from me, and I get to carry it for the rest of my life." She stood up. "That's not sad," she said. "Everybody keeps telling me that's sad. It isn't. I asked a question for 10 years and I got an answer, and the answer was yes." At 9 o'clock the next morning, Claire Sterling walked into her office, and Grant Hollis was waiting with 11,000 employees' worth of decisions in his hands. "Ma'am," he said carefully. "Fredericksburg." "Reno headcount," Claire said. "Ma'am, Reno headcount Grant." And Grant Hollis looked at his boss and saw her face and understood that she was fine and that she was going to be fine and that she had been fine since a Friday morning 3 years ago and had just needed a kitchen in Fredericksburg to find out. 341, he said. "We're hiring." "Good," Claire Sterling said. "Ethan Whitmore never remarried and never gave an interview and ran a branch of 14 people in Odessa, Texas until he was 61 and taught a kid named Marisol how to read a manifest on Thursday nights for 6 years and never once told her his last name meant anything. And every year on a Thursday in April, a wire went out from a small account in Odessa to a foundation in Reno, Nevada, in the amount of $2.4 million over 11 years, paid a little at a time from a man who had no company and no fortune and nothing but a paycheck in 40 years. It was never acknowledged. It was never announced. Claire Sterling knew about it by the third year and never said a word because she finally understood what it meant to let a man have something. The wire was always sent under the same name, Curtis Hale. Because the man who signed those divorce papers, believing he was throwing away a woman with nothing, spent the rest of his life learning the only lesson that ever mattered. The people who hold you up are never the ones who tell you they're holding you, and by the time you feel their hands come off, you have already lost them. Claire Sterling was never underestimated again, and she never needed to be.